Hi, this is attorney Joseph Ott. In my last video, I described the history of the workers' compensation system in Missouri and how that influences the value of your claim. In this video, I'd like to go over the way in which a claim is valued in terms of the degree to which it impacts your permanent total disability. For this case, I'm going to assume a case of partial permanent total disability, meaning that the individual is not impaired from doing any work whatsoever. As the last video demonstrated, the workers' compensation system is intended to work as a compromise between the interests of the employer and the employee. The employee gives up the right to a jury trial in exchange for not having to prove fault on behalf of the employer when filing their claim. The question then arises, how is a claim to be valued? Without a jury, there's no recourse to understanding how a particular injury may affect a particular individual in terms of the emotional damages or the pain and suffering. The Missouri legislature has resolved this issue by allocating a certain number of weeks to each individual body part. As you can see from the chart on my right, those number of weeks are accorded to each individual body part and can also impact a person's disability in terms of the body as a whole. To explain how these numbers are computed, I'd like to assume a simple hypothetical case. Assume in this case that a worker makes $15 an hour and assume that they work 40 hours a week. As a result, their average weekly wage will be $600. Now, assume while they are working that they injure their back. As you can see from the chart at the right, the back is not an individual body part. Rather, injuries to the back are assumed to interrupt the body as a whole and its functioning. In our hypothetical, assume the worker has received a permanent disability rating of 30%. This means that a doctor has examined the worker and made the determination that the worker is impaired at a level which prevents them from working. They are, in effect, 30% less capable of performing wage-deriving labor than they were prior to their on-the-job injury. So, because they make $600 a week, under the Missouri Workers' Compensation Statute, that number is reduced by 2/3 for the purposes of computing their total injury value. They have an average weekly wage of $400 a week. Now, given that the body as a whole has been allocated 400 weeks worth of total disability, and also given that in this case, our worker has been declared 30% disabled. Those numbers are then multiplied together like so. $400 a week multiplied by 400 weeks is $160,000. 30% of $160,000 is $48,000. So, according to our math and the Missouri Workers' Compensation Statute, a worker who is impaired at 30% body as a whole, that makes $15 an hour, and on average works for 40 hours a week, if they are determined by the administrative law judge to be 30% disabled, will receive a settlement of $48,000. Okay, now where do these numbers come from? First, take a look at the disability percentage. The disability percentage is the most hotly contested issue in every workers' compensation case. Generally, both sides will assign a doctor who will examine the client, my client or the injured worker, and make the determination as to how much the injury at issue impairs their ability to work in the future. Although it may sound arbitrary, the American Medical Association has provided a series of factors to be used when examining the percentage disability a worker is accorded. However, in contrast to the law of Illinois, this percentage in Missouri may include a broader array of factors than just the American Medical Association's factors. This means that a doctor examining an injured worker has a fair amount of leeway in determining, based upon all of the factors at their disposal, how injured a worker is. The next number is the wage rate number. The wage rate number can also be subject to some litigation. Although workers are accorded their weekly wage on the basis of the pay statements for each week averaged together, there are sometimes cases in which a worker's compensation, while they are on the job and prior to being injured, is larger than their average weekly wage. This often happens for union employees who are given benefits as a condition of their employment.